Jasmine Williams' cheek stung as the flight attendant's hand left a burning imprint across her face. The entire first-class cabin fell silent. Passengers' mouths hung open in shock. One moment she'd been requesting a pillow for her aching back. 7 months pregnant with twins. The next, violence. The flight attendant, Victoria Keller, stood over her, blue eyes blazing with undisguised contempt. "You people never know your place," she hissed. Jasmine's trembling fingers found her phone. One call would change everything. The plane hadn't even left the gate. Before we begin this shocking story of discrimination at 30,000 feet, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. If you believe in standing up against injustice wherever it occurs, hit that like and subscribe button to stay updated on more stories of courage in the face of prejudice. What would you have done if you witnessed this scene on your flight? Dr. Jasmine Williams had been planning this trip for months. As one of the few black female neurosurgeons in the country, her groundbreaking research on neuroplasticity in pregnancy would change how doctors approached prenatal care. The medical conference in Boston represented the culmination of 3 years of grueling work, balancing her surgical practice with research while navigating her pregnancy with twins. "Take first class," her husband Marcus had insisted, booking the tickets himself. "You deserve comfort, especially carrying our little ones." His warm smile and gentle hand on her growing belly had convinced her to accept the luxury she normally avoided. Jasmine settled into her spacious seat, relieved to have extra room for her 7-month pregnant body. She'd carefully packed her presentation materials in her carry-on, rehearsing key points in her mind as other passengers boarded. The moment Victoria Keller appeared in the cabin doorway, something changed. The blonde flight attendant's smile faltered when their eyes met, her professional demeanor instantly cooling. Throughout pre-takeoff preparations, Victoria served white passengers with warm efficiency, offering champagne, hanging jackets, providing headphones. When she reached Jasmine, her movements became perfunctory, her eyes never quite meeting Jasmine's. "Excuse me," Jasmine said politely when Victoria passed her seat for the 3rd time without acknowledging her request for water. "Could I please have some water for my medication?" Victoria's lips tightened. "I'll get to you when I can." 20 minutes later, Jasmine still waited as Victoria chatted amicably with an elderly white couple across the aisle. When she finally approached with water, Victoria's hand slipped, sending ice-cold liquid cascading across Jasmine's carefully prepared presentation notes. "So sorry," Victoria said, not sounding sorry at all as Jasmine frantically dabbed at her soaked documents. "You should keep those in a safer place." As takeoff preparations continued, Jasmine's lower back began aching intensely, a common discomfort in twin pregnancies her doctor had warned about. The medical conference was too important to miss, but sitting for hours without support would be agonizing. "Excuse me," she called softly as Victoria passed. "Could I please have a pillow for my back? I'm 7 months pregnant with twins and everyone has special needs," Victoria snapped, cutting her off. "You people always want special treatment." The cabin quieted. A white businessman 3 rows ahead had received 2 pillows without even asking. "I'm just requesting a standard accommodation," Jasmine explained calmly, her doctor's training kicking in. "My medical condition." The slap came out of nowhere. Victoria's hand connected with Jasmine's cheek with such force that her head snapped sideways. The sound echoed through the stunned cabin. "You people never know your place," Victoria hissed, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. Smartphones emerged as passengers began recording. Some shouted in protest while others inexplicably defended Victoria, claiming they hadn't seen the whole story. Jasmine's hand trembled as she pulled out her phone. With remarkable composure, she dialed her law school friend Rebecca Carter, now a senior legal advisor at the Department of Transportation. "Becky, it's Jasmine. I've just been physically assaulted by a flight attendant on United Airways Flight 1382 at O'Hare." "Yes, slapped across the face. I'm 7 months pregnant. The plane is still at the gate." Within minutes, the captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been instructed to remain at the gate pending an investigation into an incident on board. Please remain seated." Victoria's face drained of color as she realized what was happening. This difficult passenger had connections. But rather than backing down, her eyes hardened with resolve. She would not be humiliated by someone like Jasmine. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay," the captain announced as tension thickened the air in the first-class cabin. "We're addressing a situation and appreciate your patience." Victoria huddled with two other flight attendants, gesturing animatedly toward Jasmine, whose cheek still burned from the slap. Whispers spread through the cabin, passengers taking sides before knowing facts. "She attacked me," Victoria declared loudly when the lead flight attendant questioned her. "She grabbed my wrist when I told her we were out of pillows. I reacted instinctively to protect myself." Jasmine's mouth fell open at the blatant lie. "That's absolutely false. Multiple passengers recorded what happened." Several white passengers near the front nodded in agreement with Victoria. "The pregnant lady was being aggressive," one woman in designer sunglasses announced. "I saw it." "How exactly was she aggressive?" challenged a young black man across the aisle, his phone still recording. "By asking for a pillow while pregnant with twins?" Two airline representatives boarded, their faces grim. They pulled Victoria aside but kept glancing at Jasmine as if she were the problem. When they approached, their solution became clear. "Dr. Williams, perhaps it would be best if you took another flight," the taller representative suggested smoothly. "We could rebook you on tomorrow's departure." "I'm presenting at the National Medical Conference tomorrow," Jasmine replied evenly. "And I'm not leaving this plane when I've been assaulted. I've violated no regulations." "The situation is making other passengers uncomfortable," the representative pressed. "The racist assault made me pretty uncomfortable too," Jasmine countered. Police officers boarded next, their expressions registering annoyance at being called for what they clearly considered trivial. They barely glanced at the mark on Jasmine's face. "Ma'am, let's not escalate this," one officer said condescendingly. "Flying is stressful for everyone." "Officer, I have multiple witnesses and video evidence of being assaulted," Jasmine insisted, maintaining her professional demeanor despite growing frustration. A distinguished silver-haired man in an impeccable suit strode down the aisle. Harold Whitman, Customer Service Director. His presence should have signaled the situation was being taken seriously. Instead, he went straight to Victoria, patting her shoulder comfortingly. "I understand a passenger became unruly," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Sir, I'm Dr. Jasmine Williams," Jasmine interrupted, standing as best her pregnant body allowed. "Your flight attendant slapped me across the face for requesting a pillow. I have not raised my voice or violated any regulations. I've been assaulted on your aircraft, and I know my rights under federal transportation laws." Harold's expression hardened at her knowledge of legal protections. He opened his mouth to respond when a woman in a Department of Transportation uniform appeared in the doorway. "I'm Stephanie Kumar, DOT Passenger Rights Division," she announced, flashing credentials. "We've received a serious complaint about an assault on this aircraft." Harold's demeanor changed instantly. "We're conducting a thorough investigation," he assured her smoothly. "Just a misunderstanding." "Misunderstandings don't leave marks on passengers' faces," Stephanie replied, noting Jasmine's reddened cheek. "This incident requires immediate attention." After reviewing witness statements and videos, Stephanie conferred privately with Harold. Minutes later, Victoria was escorted from the plane, throwing a venomous glance at Jasmine. "This isn't over," she muttered as she passed. Harold addressed the cabin with practiced concern. "We apologize for the delay. Flight attendant Keller will be replaced, and will conduct a full investigation into this unfortunate incident." The flight finally departed 2 hours late. Though Jasmine remained in her seat, the atmosphere had changed. The remaining crew served her minimally. Other passengers either stared or pointedly avoided eye contact, and whispers followed her bathroom visits. What should have been a comfortable journey became an exercise in endurance. Do you believe Jasmine was right to stand her ground? Or should she have taken another flight to avoid the tension? Comment 1 if you think she made the right choice, staying on board, or 2 if you think she should have accepted the rebooking. Like and subscribe if you believe everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of their race. What would happen when Jasmine finally reached Boston? Would this incident fade away? Or was it just the beginning of a much bigger storm that would change her life forever? Jasmine's phone exploded with notifications the moment the plane landed in Boston. The videos had gone viral, Dr. Jasmine vs. Victoria trending nationwide. She scrolled through headlines during taxi. Pregnant doctor slapped by flight attendant in D-Fly. Shocking video. Race in the skies, confrontation goes viral. Flight attendant claims self-defense against aggressive passenger. Conservative news outlets had already framed Victoria as the victim. Flight attendant defends herself against entitled passenger. Social media campaigns had formed within hours. Justice for Jasmine battling, Giant stand with Victoria across platforms. As Jasmine exited the jetway, she froze. The terminal teemed with people holding signs. Some supported her. Black Lives Matter in the air too. Others condemned her. Stop playing the race card. Airport security created a pathway through the chaos. Dr. Williams, how does it feel to destroy a woman's career over a misunderstanding? Shouted a reporter, thrusting a microphone toward her. Dr. Williams, will you be filing charges for assault? Called another. Her phone rang. Marcus. Jasmine, are you okay? It's everywhere. Your mother's been getting calls from reporters at her house. I'm fine, she assured him, though her heart raced. Just need to get to the hotel and prepare for tomorrow's presentation. The hotel lobby offered no sanctuary. Conference attendees stared as she checked in, whispers following her to the elevator. The conference coordinator, Dr. Lawrence Patel, waited by her room. Jasmine, he began awkwardly, you've put us in a difficult position. I've put you in a difficult position? She repeated incredulously. He shifted uncomfortably. Several sponsors have expressed concerns about your presentation becoming a distraction from the scientific content. My research stands on its merit, Jasmine replied firmly. The incident on the plane has nothing to do with my work on neuroplasticity during pregnancy. Perhaps we could reschedule your presentation for next year's conference, he suggested. Give things time to settle. My research helps pregnant women now, Jasmine countered, hand resting protectively on her belly. I won't allow discrimination twice in 24 hours. Dr. Patel sighed. Your presentation remains scheduled for 9 a.m. But please understand, this puts the conference in a challenging position. Alone in her room, Jasmine rehearsed her presentation while checking updates. United Airlines had issued a tepid statement. We're investigating an incident between a passenger and crew member. United is committed to treating all passengers with respect. Victoria had already appeared on Nation Talk News, tears streaming as she described feeling threatened by Jasmine. I've never discriminated against anyone, she claimed. I felt physically afraid when she became agitated. The host nodded sympathetically. Are you concerned about being labeled racist in today's cancel culture? The comment section beneath the interview overflowed with support for Victoria, many comments too vile for Jasmine to finish reading. Her presentation folder contained a note when she opened it. Go home, N-word doctor. Security was called, reports filed, but the damage was done. Sleep proved impossible that night. The next morning, Jasmine entered the presentation hall to mixed reactions, some supportive nods, others cold stares. The room should have been full for research of this caliber, but many seats remained conspicuously empty. Dr. Patel's introduction was perfunctory at best. Taking a deep breath, Jasmine stepped to the podium. Good morning. I'm Dr. Jasmine Williams, presenting neuroplasticity optimization in high-risk pregnancies. Before I begin, yes, I'm the doctor from yesterday's viral video. Yes, I was assaulted for requesting accommodation for my pregnancy, but for the next 40 minutes I'm asking you to focus on the science that can help thousands of women and their babies. For the next 40 minutes, she delivered her research, flawlessly, each slide, each data point, each conclusion presented with unwavering professional precision. When she finished, the applause was tentative at first, then grew as medical professionals recognized the value of her work, regardless of the controversy. Backstage, her phone showed a new email from United Airlines. We apologize for your experience. After careful review, we've determined this was an isolated incident not reflecting our values. We offer compensation of $5,000 and request your discretion in this matter. Meanwhile, Victoria appeared on another news program. I've served passengers of all backgrounds for 15 years without incident. This one passenger has destroyed my reputation with a misleading video. Returning to her hotel room, Jasmine found a note under her door. We know where you sleep, race baiter. The hotel relocated her to a secure floor, but sleep remained elusive as the twins kicked restlessly inside her. Her phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Dr. Williams, I worked with Victoria Keller. What happened to you wasn't isolated. Please call me. Others are afraid to speak up. 3 days after returning home from Boston, Jasmine sat in her obstetrician's office for a stress monitoring appointment. Her blood pressure had spiked dangerously since the incident. You need to reduce your stress immediately, Dr. Chen warned, reviewing her numbers. These readings aren't compatible with a healthy twin pregnancy. I'm recommending reduced work hours and bed rest if things don't improve within a week. Jasmine nodded, though her mind raced with complications. The medical conference had been just the beginning. She'd returned to find her hospital administrator suggesting she take early maternity leave until things blow over. Colleagues walked on eggshells around her. Her carefully built professional life was unraveling because she'd asked for a pillow. Her phone buzzed. Rebecca from the Department of Transportation. Jasmine, I've been digging into United's handling of your complaint, Rebecca explained. Something strange is happening. The internal investigation is being redirected at every turn. Normal protocols aren't being followed. What does that mean? It means someone with influence is interfering, Rebecca replied. I couldn't figure out why until I checked personnel records. Victoria Keller is Richard Sterling's niece. Who's Richard Sterling? Only the chief operating officer of United Airlines, Rebecca said grimly. Victoria's mother is his sister. The pieces clicked into place. Why the airline's response had been so muted. Why Victoria remained defiant. Why the investigation seemed designed to go nowhere. When Jasmine arrived home, an overnight package waited. Formal settlement documents, offering $50,000 with a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. The terms were explicit. She would never discuss the incident publicly, remove all social media posts, and make a statement that the matter had been mutually resolved to all parties' satisfaction. Marcus reviewed the documents with growing anger. They're trying to buy your silence, and they think your pregnancy makes you vulnerable, added their friend Carlos, a civil rights attorney who'd stopped by to offer support. They're hoping you'll prioritize peace before the babies arrive. Jasmine's phone rang constantly. Journalists seeking comments, strangers offering support or spewing vitriol, and increasingly, her medical colleagues making excuses to distance themselves. I can't have you assist on the Peterson surgery, her department head explained awkwardly. The family specifically requested you not be involved. They don't want the controversy affecting their child's care. The professional isolation hurt worse than the online attacks. Doctors who'd previously sought her expertise now avoided eye contact in hospital corridors. Conference invitations mysteriously dried up. The message was clear. Fighting racism made her a liability. The stress manifested physically. At night, Jasmine experienced Braxton Hicks contractions with increasing frequency. Her ankles swelled dramatically. Sleep became a distant memory. Then came an unexpected breakthrough. The anonymous texter, Tara Johnston, a flight attendant who'd worked with Victoria for 5 years, finally agreed to meet at a quiet coffee shop in the suburbs. Victoria has a nickname among minority crew members, Tara explained, nervously checking over her shoulder. The classifier. She classifies passengers by race, then decides their service level accordingly. Has anyone reported this? Jasmine asked. Multiple times. Tara nodded. At least 7 formal complaints from Black, Latino, and Middle Eastern passengers in the past 3 years, all mysteriously resolved with no disciplinary action. How is that possible? Now I know. Her. Uncle, but there's more, Tara continued. United has an internal review system categorizing passenger complaints by potential public relations impact. They assess complainants by social media following, profession, and connections. Essentially, how much trouble they can cause the airline. That's explicitly discriminatory, Jasmine realized. They're systematically dismissing complaints from people with less social power. Exactly. And your case triggered their highest alert level because you're a doctor with connections to the DOT. Otherwise, this would have been buried like all the others. Tara provided documentation, redacted complaint records, email chains, the scoring matrix used to assess complaint threat levels. The evidence painted a damning picture of systemic discrimination. That evening, as Jasmine and Marcus reviewed the documents, the phone rang. Richard Sterling himself, his voice smooth with practiced concern. "Dr. Williams, I wanted to personally reach out about this unfortunate incident. We value you as a passenger and medical professional." "Interesting timing, Mr. Sterling," Jasmine replied coolly. "I've just been reviewing some troubling documents about your airline's complaint handling procedures." A pause. "I'm not familiar with what you're referring to, but I suggest we resolve this matter privately. The settlement offer is quite generous." "It's not about money, Mr. Sterling. It's about accountability." His tone hardened. "Dr. Williams, these matters can become unnecessarily complicated. Your medical practice, your pregnancy. Why invite additional stress into your life? Sometimes it's best to move forward." The implied threat hung in the air. "I need to consider what's best for my family," Jasmine responded carefully. "Wise decision," Sterling replied, his relief palpable. "Have your attorney contact our legal department tomorrow." Jasmine hung up and turned to Marcus. "He thinks I'm backing down." Marcus squeezed her hand. "Are you?" Jasmine placed his palm against her belly, where one of the twins kicked vigorously. "Our children will be born into a world that will judge them by their skin color. What lesson do I teach them if I take money to be silent about discrimination?" That night, Jasmine formally declined the settlement offer and filed an expanded discrimination complaint with the Department of Transportation, the Federal Aviation Administration, and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. The next morning, her hospital received an anonymous call questioning her medical credentials. By afternoon, 3 more of her scheduled surgeries had been canceled by patient request. The battle had only just begun. The certified letter arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning, United Airlines' formal response to Jasmine's expanded complaint. The document, prepared by the prestigious law firm Hawthorne & Reed, systematically dismissed each allegation. Victoria was described as a valued employee with an unblemished 15-year record. The incident was characterized as a misunderstanding between parties, exacerbated by the complainant's heightened emotional state due to pregnancy. Heightened emotional state? Jasmine seethed, passing the letter to Carlos, who had agreed to represent her. "They're using my pregnancy to discredit me?" Carlos scanned the document, his expression darkening. "This is just the beginning. Hawthorne & Reed doesn't handle simple customer complaints. They're United's nuclear option for high-stakes litigation." The airline's strategy unfolded with ruthless efficiency. Their legal team filed motions demanding all of Jasmine's medical records, claiming her mental and emotional state was central to the case. They requested her complete employment history, professional evaluations, and even her medical school records, an invasive fishing expedition designed to find any imperfection in her past. "They're looking for anything to discredit you," Carlos explained during a strategy session in Jasmine's living room. "A poor grade, a disagreement with a colleague, a patient complaint, anything they can use to paint you as difficult or unstable." "They won't find anything," Jasmine insisted. "I've worked twice as hard my entire career precisely because I knew I'd be scrutinized more harshly." "It doesn't have to be substantial," Marcus warned, his marketing executive experience providing insight into corporate tactics. "They just need something they can spin for public opinion." The airline hired Blackwater Crisis Management, a firm specializing in protecting corporate reputations. Within days, comments appeared across social media platforms questioning Jasmine's motives. Why is Dr. Williams targeting this airline? What is she really after? Convenient how she's using her pregnancy for sympathy. Journalists began receiving anonymous tips about Jasmine's troubling history. One reporter called asking for comment on an incident during her residency, where she had supposedly misdiagnosed a patient due to negligence. The reality, she had questioned an attending physician's diagnosis, which proved correct and saved the patient's life, had been twisted into a narrative of incompetence. The legal discovery process became increasingly hostile. United's attorneys scheduled Jasmine's deposition for 8 hours despite her high-risk pregnancy, refusing requests for shorter sessions. When Carlos objected on medical grounds, they insinuated she was using her condition to manipulate the proceedings. At home, personal stress mounted. Marcus grew increasingly quiet, working late and taking calls in private. When Jasmine questioned him, he finally admitted the truth. "JKL Pharmaceuticals is dropping their marketing contract with my firm," he explained, his voice hollow. "They claim it's budget restructuring, but my director told me privately that United's CEO called their board chairman. United's pharmaceutical shipping contracts are worth millions to JKL. They're targeting your job because of me?" Jasmine whispered, horrified. Marcus tried to reassure her. "We have savings. This case matters. We'll manage." 2 days later, Marcus arrived home ashen-faced. "The restructuring hit today. 20% of the marketing department, including me. They called it downsizing. But the only employees affected worked on accounts with no connection to United or its subsidiaries." That night, as Jasmine lay awake calculating finances, their mortgage, healthcare costs, the impending expenses of twins, her phone rang. Her mother's neighbor calling from Atlanta. "Jasmine, honey, your mama collapsed in her garden. The ambulance just took her to Atlanta Memorial. They're saying it might have been a heart attack." The overnight flight to Atlanta was a cruel echo of where everything had started. Every flight attendant's glance made Jasmine wonder if they'd recognized her. Her mother, a retired school principal who'd raised Jasmine alone after her father's death, had always been her rock. Now she lay in cardiac intensive care, tubes and wires monitoring her condition. "The stress," her mother whispered when she regained consciousness. "Those terrible people calling at all hours, saying such awful things about my baby girl. I told them you've never backed down from bullies, not since elementary school." Jasmine realized her mother had been shielding her from hate calls directed to her childhood home. The campaign against her had extended to harassing a 68-year-old woman with a previously clean bill of health. In the hospital chapel that night, Jasmine faced her darkest moment. Her career under attack, her husband unemployed, her mother hospitalized, her unborn children at risk from her rising blood pressure, all because she'd stood up against one act of discrimination. Perhaps taking the settlement would have protected everyone she loved. Her phone vibrated with a text from Marcus. "Don't you dare give up. That's exactly what they want. Your mother raised a fighter. Our babies need to know their mother never backs down from truth." Through tears, Jasmine made her decision. The next morning, she called Carlos from the hospital corridor. "We're not just fighting for me anymore," she told him. "File the expanded lawsuit. Add emotional distress, corporate intimidation, and retaliatory actions. We're going after the entire system that protects people like Victoria and punishes victims who speak up. Have you ever stood up for what's right, only to face unexpected consequences?" Comment 1 if you think Jasmine should continue fighting despite the personal cost, or 2 if you believe protecting her family should come first. Like and subscribe if you want to see more stories about fighting systemic injustice. Did Jasmine make the right call, or was she risking too much? And what would happen when the airline discovered just how determined she really was? Could one pregnant doctor really stand against a corporate giant with seemingly unlimited resources to crush her? The Atlanta hospital cafeteria wasn't Jasmine's first choice for a confidential meeting, but with her mother still recovering upstairs, she had little flexibility. The woman who slipped into the seat across from her looked nervously over her shoulder before speaking. "I'm Tara Johnston. We texted earlier," she said quietly, removing her sunglasses to reveal tired eyes. "I'm risking everything talking to you." "I appreciate you coming," Jasmine replied sincerely. "You mentioned you worked with Victoria?" Tara nodded, her fingers nervously shredding a napkin. 4 years as flight attendants together. What happened? To you wasn't an isolated incident. For the next hour, Tara detailed a pattern of behavior that chilled Jasmine to the core. Victoria regularly classified passengers by race and appearance, providing dramatically different service levels accordingly. She used coded language with sympathetic crew members. We've got a Section 8 in 5C or affirmative action in first class today. Most flight attendants are professional and fair, Tara emphasized, but Victoria created a toxic atmosphere. Those who complained were labeled too sensitive or found their schedules rearranged to include undesirable routes. Why risk your job to tell me this? Jasmine asked. Tara's eyes hardened. My sister is married to a black man. Their son, my nephew, is 10. Last month they flew to Disney World on Victoria's flight. She made my nephew wait an hour for a soda while serving everyone around him. When my sister complained, Victoria said there must be a misunderstanding. That's when I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. Tara provided Jasmine with documentation that proved invaluable. Screenshots of crew scheduling showing how complainants were punished, copies of unaddressed passenger complaints, even internal emails discussing how to manage diversity issues without creating liability. Most damning was a spreadsheet Tara had accessed through the company's internal system, a tracking document categorizing customer complaints by passenger demographics and priority level. Complaints from minority passengers were consistently categorized as low priority, regardless of severity. Take these, Tara insisted, sliding a flash drive across the table. I've made copies. There's a pattern going back years. The evidence transformed Jasmine's case from a single incident into a systemic issue. Exactly what United feared most. Carlos immediately filed amended complaints with federal agencies, including the new evidence. Within days, 3 additional former employees contacted Jasmine's legal team with similar accounts. The airline's investigation, which had been proceeding at a glacial pace, suddenly accelerated. Victoria was placed on administrative leave pending review, the first acknowledgement that her conduct warranted scrutiny. Richard Sterling issued a carefully worded statement about United's ongoing commitment to creating an inclusive environment for all passengers. For the first time since the slap, Jasmine felt vindicated. Her mother's condition stabilized enough for transfer to a cardiac rehabilitation facility. Marcus received 2 promising job interviews. The twins' latest ultrasound showed healthy development despite the stress. Perhaps the tide was turning. Then Tara called, her voice trembling. They know, she gasped. Someone saw us meeting in Atlanta. I've been terminated for violation of company confidentiality policies. We'll add wrongful termination to the lawsuit, Jasmine assured her. They can't fire you for reporting discrimination. It's worse, Tara continued. They're claiming, I accessed confidential records without authorization. They're talking about pressing criminal charges for corporate espionage. My apartment was broken into last night. My laptop and backup drives are gone. Nothing else was taken. The message was clear. Anyone helping Jasmine would face destruction. That evening, another former employee who had agreed to testify withdrew, citing personal reasons. A second stopped returning calls entirely. They're picking us off one by one, Carlos observed grimly. Classic intimidation tactics. Jasmine made a decision that Marcus initially opposed. Tara needs protection. She's staying with us until this is resolved. We're already targets, Marcus argued. Bringing her here puts everyone at greater risk. We can't fight systematic discrimination by abandoning each other, Jasmine countered. That's exactly how they win. Tara moved into their guest room. The next day, jumping at shadows and checking the locks repeatedly. Her fear proved justified when Jasmine's home security camera captured images of someone photographing their house at 3 a.m. The stakes escalated when CNN aired an investigative segment on discrimination in the airline industry, featuring Jasmine's case prominently. The producer had independently verified several of Tara's claims. Other passengers came forward with similar experiences, not just with Victoria, but throughout United's service network. Public opinion began shifting as the broader pattern emerged. United's stock price dipped 3% following the broadcast. Activist investors demanded answers at the quarterly earnings call. For the first time, Richard Sterling sounded defensive when questioned about discrimination allegations. The corporate response turned even more aggressive. United's PR team released a statement questioning the timing and motivation behind the coordinated media campaign. They emphasized Victoria's years of exemplary service and suggested she was being scapegoated by special interest groups. Then came the counterattack, a civil lawsuit filed against Jasmine, Carlos, and Tara, alleging defamation, tortious interference with business relationships, and conspiracy. The damages sought, $20 million. They're trying to bankrupt us into silence, Carlos explained, reviewing the complaint. Even winning would cost hundreds of thousands in legal fees. Can they do this? Marcus asked. It's a strategic lawsuit against public participation. A slap suit, Carlos explained, designed to intimidate and drain resources. They don't expect to win, they expect to exhaust us. That night, as Jasmine tried to sleep, one of the twins kicked particularly hard, as if protesting the injustice. She placed her hand over the movement, making a silent promise to her unborn children. The world they entered would not be one where she had backed down from fighting discrimination, no matter the cost. The conference room in Carlos's law office had transformed into an investigation headquarters. Whiteboards covered with timeline notes lined the walls. Stacks of depositions and evidence binders covered the table. Jasmine, now 8 months pregnant, and monitoring her blood pressure hourly, reviewed testimony from United's corporate compliance officer. Listen to this, she called to Carlos, who was preparing for tomorrow's hearing. When asked about discrimination complaint procedures, Sterling testified, every complaint receives equal consideration regardless of the passenger's background. But Tara's spreadsheets prove complaints were explicitly categorized by passenger demographics. Perjury, Carlos noted, adding it to their growing list of violations. The more we dig, the worse it gets. 3 key revelations had emerged from their investigation. First, Victoria Keller had a documented history of 7 previous incidents involving minority passengers, all buried under vague customer service misunderstandings in her file. Second, the airline maintained a secret risk assessment system that rated complaints based on the complainant's potential to generate negative publicity or legal action. Third, and most damning, settlement amounts for identical complaints varied dramatically based on passengers' race, with white passengers receiving substantially higher compensation. It's not just Victoria, Tara explained, pointing to email chains. It's systematic. Harold Whitman and Richard Sterling have been bearing discrimination complaints for years. The evidence painted a picture of corporate culture where discrimination wasn't just tolerated, but effectively sanctioned through non-enforcement of policies. In private emails, Harold had referred to discrimination complaints as the race card being played and advised managers to minimize exposure by resolving these quietly. As their case strengthened, so did the opposition's tactics. Jasmine's hospital privileges were suddenly under review after an anonymous complaint. Marcus's job interviews mysteriously fell through after proceeding promisingly. Their health insurance notified them of a verification process that placed their coverage temporarily on hold, right as Jasmine approached her delivery date. They're attacking every aspect of our lives, Marcus observed as they sorted through the latest barrage of letters and notices, making it impossible to function normally. Carlos had secured pro bono support from a major civil rights law firm, providing resources to fight back against United's legal onslaught, but the personal toll mounted daily. Jasmine's blood pressure remained dangerously elevated. Her obstetrician had placed her on modified bed rest, allowing only essential movement and no work. The evidence is so clear, Jasmine lamented during a strategy session she attended via video call from her bed. How can they keep denying everything when we have documentation? Because corporations this size operate in a different reality, explained Layla Freeman, the civil rights attorney who had joined their team. They don't need to win, they just need to exhaust us emotionally, financially, and physically until we give up. But giving up had never been in Jasmine's nature. Despite her pregnancy complications, she participated in every strategic decision, reviewed every document, and prepared diligently for her testimony at the upcoming Department of Transportation hearing. Then came the ultrasound photo in the mail. No return address, no note. Just a printed copy of Jasmine's most recent ultrasound with a red X drawn across the twins' images. Marcus immediately contacted police, but the detective's response was disheartening. Unfortunately, while disturbing, this doesn't constitute a specific threat. We'll increase patrols in your neighborhood, but there's little else we can do without more concrete evidence. That night, Marcus installed additional security cameras and a more sophisticated alarm system. He began sleeping in shifts with Tara to ensure someone was always awake and vigilant. The sense of violation, that someone had accessed their private medical information, left Jasmine feeling vulnerable in ways she had never experienced. "We need to consider the settlement offer," Marcus suggested gently after a particularly difficult night where Jasmine's contractions had intensified from stress. "The twins are what matter most. And what lesson do we teach them by allowing this injustice to continue?" Jasmine countered, though her conviction wavered as she considered the risks. "If we settle, nothing changes. The next black pregnant woman who boards a United flight might face the same discrimination." The case had expanded far beyond a single slap. Through their legal discovery, they had uncovered what amounted to institutionalized discrimination affecting thousands of passengers and employees. The Department of Transportation had broadened its investigation to include United's entire customer complaint resolution system. 3 days before the scheduled hearing, Jasmine experienced severe abdominal pain. Marcus rushed her to the hospital, fearing premature labor. The diagnosis was preeclampsia, a dangerous pregnancy complication characterized by high blood pressure and protein in the urine that could threaten both Jasmine and the twins. "Complete bed rest until delivery," her doctor ordered firmly. "Your blood pressure is dangerously high. Any additional stress could trigger seizures or placental abruption." Carlos visited her hospital room, his expression grave. "The hearing is scheduled for Thursday. Given your condition, we can request a postponement." "They'll claim I'm delaying to manipulate the process," Jasmine replied, remembering United's previous accusations. "How long would a postponement take?" "Minimum 30 days, likely longer with their attorneys filing objections." Jasmine thought about Victoria still collecting salary on administrative leave. She thought about Tara, unemployed and facing potential criminal charges for exposing the truth. She thought about other passengers facing discrimination while the system remained unchanged. "I'll be at the hearing," she decided firmly. "The doctor can discharge me for those hours. This might be our only chance to be heard." "Jasmine, your health," Marcus began. "Is at risk either way," she finished. "The stress of allowing this injustice to continue is as dangerous as testifying. I need to look those executives in the eye when they're finally held accountable." Carlos nodded reluctantly. "I'll make the arrangements for medical transport and have a nurse on standby." That night, as Jasmine lay in her hospital bed watching monitors track her baby's heartbeats, she composed a letter to her unborn daughters, explaining why their mother had chosen to fight rather than retreat. Whatever happened at Thursday's hearing, she wanted them to understand the world she had tried to create for them. One where discrimination faced consequences, where speaking truth to power wasn't just a platitude, but a necessary action. The letter complete, Jasmine finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, dreaming of courtrooms where justice prevailed and airplanes where everyone received equal treatment regardless of their skin color. The Department of Transportation hearing room buzzed with tension as Jasmine was wheeled in by a medical attendant. Camera shutters clicked rapidly, capturing the striking image. A heavily pregnant black woman in a wheelchair, medical monitoring, devices attached discreetly beneath her professional blazer, facing a row of airline executives in expensive suits. The contrast wasn't lost on anyone present. On one side sat Jasmine, Marcus, Carlos, and their legal team. On the opposite side, United's representatives filled 3 tables: Richard Sterling, Harold Whitman, corporate counsel, external attorneys from Hawthorne and Reed, and public relations, staff frantically typing on tablets. Victoria Keller sat slightly apart, looking simultaneously defiant and nervous beside her personal attorney. Her once immaculate flight attendant uniform had been replaced by a conservative navy dress that screamed victim rather than aggressor. The Transportation Committee members filed in, led by Chairman Douglas Peterson, whose connections to the airline industry were well documented. His previous position on United's Business Advisory Board hadn't been enough to force his recusal, despite Carlos's formal objection. "This hearing will come to order," Peterson announced brusquely. "We're investigating complaint number DOT 7722 regarding alleged discriminatory practices. I remind everyone this is a fact-finding process, not a trial." His emphasis on alleged set the tone immediately. Carlos exchanged a knowing glance with Jasmine. They faced an uphill battle. The airline's presentation went first, offering a carefully sanitized narrative. Victoria described feeling threatened by Jasmine's aggressive demands and intimidating posture. "I reacted instinctively to protect myself," she testified, a practiced quiver in her voice. "In my 15 years of service, I've never had any issue with passengers of any background." Jasmine's blood pressure monitor beeped quietly as the lies accumulated. The nurse beside her adjusted something on the portable machine, giving her a concerned glance. Harold Whitman presented statistics, showing United's industry-leading diversity initiatives and complaint resolution metrics. The data had been carefully curated to obscure the discriminatory patterns Jasmine's team had uncovered. When Carlos attempted to introduce Tara's spreadsheets during cross-examination, Chairman Peterson interrupted. "This information appears to have been obtained without proper authorization. The committee cannot consider illegally acquired evidence. These documents demonstrate a pattern of systematic discrimination," Carlos argued. "Under federal whistleblower protections, counsel, this committee has determined these documents inadmissible." Peterson cut him off firmly. "Move on." One by one, their strongest evidence points were excluded on various procedural grounds. Witness testimonies from other passengers were limited to written statements rather than in-person accounts. The statistical analysis showing disparate treatment of minority complainants was dismissed as speculative. During a brief recess, Carlos conferred with Jasmine in a side room where her nurse was checking her vitals. "They've rigged this completely," he fumed. "Peterson is blocking every significant piece of evidence. Your blood pressure is climbing dangerously," the nurse warned Jasmine. "We should consider returning to the hospital." "Not yet," Jasmine insisted. "I still have my testimony." When the hearing resumed, Jasmine was called to testify. The medical attendant wheeled her to the witness table where she faced the committee, directly. "Dr. Williams," Chairman Peterson began, "understanding your medical condition, we'll keep this brief. Please describe the incident in question." Jasmine had prepared extensively for this moment, knowing it might be their only opportunity to break through the procedural barriers. Rather than focusing solely on Victoria's slap, she methodically outlined the entire pattern she had uncovered. "This case isn't about a single incident of discrimination," she stated clearly. "It's about a corporate culture that enables and protects discriminatory behavior while silencing victims through intimidation and legal maneuvering." Chairman Peterson repeatedly attempted to redirect her to just the facts of the specific incident, but Jasmine continued presenting the broader context. When she detailed how United had interfered with her employment and her husband's career, murmurs spread through the audience. "Dr. Williams, please confine your testimony to the events on the aircraft," Peterson insisted. "These retaliatory actions are directly relevant to understanding how discrimination is perpetuated," Jasmine countered. "When victims face destruction of their livelihoods for speaking up, the discrimination effectively continues beyond the initial incident." Her composed clinical description of the systematic intimidation she had experienced resonated even with skeptical observers. Several committee members appeared increasingly uncomfortable as she described the threatening ultrasound image and her current medical condition, resulting from the stress of United's retaliatory actions. As Jasmine concluded her testimony, a commotion erupted at the back of the hearing room. Rebecca Carter, Jasmine's original DOT contact who had been conspicuously absent throughout the proceedings, entered with 2 federal agents. Carlos immediately requested another recess, which Peterson reluctantly granted. In the side room, Rebecca explained her shocking reversal. "I'm so sorry, Jasmine, they got to me," she admitted, unable to meet Jasmine's eyes. "Sterling offered me a senior compliance position with United with triple my government salary. I convinced myself I could do more good from the inside." "What changed?" Marcus demanded. "They expected me to falsify reports about discrimination complaints," Rebecca explained. "When I hesitated, they reminded me that my brother's pilot career could be affected by my lack of cooperation. Then they showed me what they'd done to you, how far they'd go to silence someone. I couldn't be part of that." Rebecca had brought copies of emails proving the airline had deliberately obstructed the DOT investigation, including communications with Chairman Peterson, coordinating how to limit testimony and evidence. "This changes everything," Carlos said, reviewing the documents. "These prove illegal interference with a federal investigation." When the hearing reconvened, the dynamics had shifted dramatically. The federal agents remained in the room, their presence clearly unsettling the airline executives. Chairman Peterson's confident demeanor had given way to visible anxiety as he conferred urgently with committee counsel. Carlos formally submitted Rebecca's evidence. This time, Peterson didn't dare exclude it, though he limited questioning about its contents pending review of its authenticity. As the hearing continued, Richard Sterling was called to testify. His carefully constructed narrative crumbled under questioning about specific emails where he had directed subordinates to make this discrimination complaint go away and remind Carter where her true opportunities lie. The committee, sensing the changing winds, began asking more pointed questions. Even members who had initially seemed aligned with the airline now distanced themselves, focusing on transparency and accountability. By the session's end, Chairman Peterson announced grimly, "Given today's revelations, this committee finds sufficient evidence to refer this matter for further investigation by the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. This hearing is adjourned pending that investigation." It wasn't the clear victory Jasmine had hoped for. The committee had avoided making definitive findings about the discrimination itself, but the referral to the Justice Department opened a new and potentially more powerful avenue for accountability. As Jasmine was wheeled from the hearing room, a sharp pain seized her abdomen. Her nurse immediately checked her blood pressure, her expression grave at the reading. "We need to get you to the hospital immediately," she insisted. "Your pressure is stroke level high." The twins, apparently decided the day had contained enough drama, chose that moment to begin their arrival into the world. As contractions intensified, Jasmine caught a final glimpse of Victoria and Richard Sterling huddled with their attorneys, their faces masks of concern. Whatever happened next, the untouchable facade had finally cracked. Has the system ever failed you when you needed justice most? Comment 1 if you've experienced or witnessed discrimination that went unaddressed, or 2 if you've seen justice prevail against powerful opposition. Like and subscribe to follow more stories of courage against systemic injustice. With Jasmine now in premature labor and the Department of Justice involved, would justice finally be served? Or would United find new ways to escape accountability, as Jasmine fought not just for justice but for her baby's lives? The neonatal intensive care unit hummed with the mechanical rhythms of life support. Jasmine's twin daughters, Olivia and Maya, had arrived 7 weeks early, each weighing just over 4 pounds. Their tiny bodies rested in incubators, connected to monitors tracking every heartbeat, breath, and oxygen level. Though stable, they faced the standard challenges of premature birth, underdeveloped lungs, difficulty regulating body temperature, and feeding complications. Jasmine divided her time between her own recovery room and the NICU, wheelchaired back and forth by nurses who bent visitation rules for the new mother. Her preeclampsia had stabilized after delivery, but her doctors remained concerned about potential postpartum complications. Despite her physical exhaustion, Jasmine's mind remained focused on the case. Carlos visited daily, bringing updates and documents for review. The Department of Justice investigation had officially launched, with investigators interviewing former United employees and passengers who had experienced similar discrimination. "The evidence is overwhelming," Carlos reported, keeping his voice low in the hospital room. Rebecca's testimony opened the floodgates. 5 more employees have come forward with documentation of the airline's discriminatory practices. Hope flickered until Rebecca failed to appear for her scheduled DOJ interview. When investigators visited her apartment, they found it empty, her phone disconnected. She had vanished completely. 2 days later, Jasmine received a text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry. They made me an offer I couldn't refuse. A new position overseas, all records of the incident erased. My brother's pilot career was at stake. Please forgive me." Rebecca's defection dealt a devastating blow. As their primary DOT contact and whistleblower, her testimony had been crucial to establishing the pattern of corporate interference. Without her, significant portions of their evidence became hearsay. The hospital television played constantly in the background, where United's crisis management campaign unfolded relentlessly. Victoria appeared on morning shows, tears streaming, as she described feeling scapegoated for political correctness. Medical experts questioned whether Jasmine's pregnancy complications might have caused her to misinterpret normal service interactions through a lens of heightened emotional sensitivity. Most damaging was the leaked video, carefully edited footage showing only Jasmine gesturing emphatically while speaking to Victoria, with the actual slap conveniently missing. Conservative commentators analyzed her body language, calling it objectively threatening and justifiably alarming to the flight attendant. Tara, their remaining whistleblower, faced devastating personal attacks. Someone had accessed her employment records, revealing a decade-old disciplinary action for a missed flight. This single incident was spun into a narrative of chronic unreliability and questionable credibility. When prosecutors declined to pursue charges for the documents she had shared, United filed a civil suit seeking millions in damages for theft of proprietary information. The coordinated attack extended beyond the primary witnesses. The medical professionals who had corroborated Jasmine's pregnancy complications found themselves subjected to anonymous complaints to their licensing boards. Carlos's law firm lost 2 major corporate clients without explanation. Even the hospital wasn't immune. The administration received inquiries about Jasmine's special treatment in the NICU, suggesting her medical connections had secured preferential care for her daughters over other premature infants. "They're trying to isolate us completely," Marcus observed, his voice hollow with exhaustion. 7 job interviews had mysteriously fallen through after progressing to final stages. Their savings were dwindling rapidly, with medical bills mounting, despite insurance. Jasmine held tiny Maya against her chest for skin-to-skin contact, the infant's fragile heartbeat a reminder of everything at stake. "We knew they'd fight dirty," she whispered, "but I never imagined they could corrupt the entire system like this." The final betrayal came from an unexpected source. 2 days before Jasmine was scheduled to be discharged, her phone rang. Her friend and DOT contact, Stephanie Kumar, who had initially supported their case. "Jasmine, I need to warn you." Stephanie's voice was tense. "The committee's preliminary findings document was just circulated internally. Peterson has completely rewritten the conclusions." "What do you mean?" "The official finding states insufficient evidence of systemic discrimination and characterizes the incident as an isolated misunderstanding between parties. They're recommending no further action beyond a general reminder to airlines about customer service standards." "That's impossible," Jasmine protested. "The Justice Department is actively investigating. The evidence is being systematically discredited," Stephanie finished grimly. "Rebecca's disappearance let them invalidate her testimony entirely. The committee is accepting Victoria's account as credible due to her unblemished record, and suggesting your perception may have been affected by pregnancy hormones." The casual dismissal of both racism and her medical expertise in one swoop left Jasmine speechless. "There's more," Stephanie continued reluctantly. "Your former colleague Dr. Patel provided a statement describing you as combative and quick to perceive discrimination during your residency. They're using it to establish a pattern of misinterpreting situations." "Lawrence Patel? He mentored me. He wrote my recommendation letter for the neurosurgery fellowship." United's parent company owned significant shares in the pharmaceutical, firm that funds his research. $3 million in grant money was approved the day after his statement. The systematic corruption was breathtaking in its scope and efficiency. Every support system, every protection, every avenue for justice had been methodically undermined or co-opted. That evening, as Jasmine sat beside the twins' incubators watching their tiny chests rise and fall, she received a final blow. Her hospital privileges review had concluded. Her surgical credentials were suspended pending further evaluation of recent concerns. Without hospital privileges, she couldn't practice neurosurgery, effectively ending her career unless the suspension was reversed. For the first time since the incident began, Jasmine wept openly, her tears falling on Olivia's incubator as the consequences crashed down around her. She had stood against discrimination and lost everything: her career, her financial security, her professional reputation, and nearly her health and her babies. Marcus found her there, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. He knelt beside her wheelchair, taking her hands in his. "Maybe it's time to consider their settlement offer," he suggested, gently. "For the girl's sake. We've fought hard, but they've rigged the entire system. We can't beat unlimited resources and influence." The fight had cost them nearly everything. Perhaps it was time to salvage what remained of their lives and focus on their daughter's future. "Let me think about it," Jasmine whispered, gazing at her tiny daughters fighting for every breath. She had to decide what lesson she would ultimately teach them: persistence against impossible odds, or pragmatic retreat to protect what mattered most. 3 a.m. feedings had become Jasmine's quiet sanctuary. In the dimly lit NICU parent room, she held Maya while Marcus fed Olivia, the baby's now 2 weeks old and slowly gaining strength. Their quiet moments together, free from legal discussions and strategic decisions, provided brief respite from the crushing weight of their situation. Jasmine's phone buzzed with an email notification, unusual for the middle of the night. The sender address was a string of random characters. The subject, line simply, evidence. She almost deleted it as spam until she noticed the first line. "Dr. Williams, you don't know me, but I work in United Airlines IT department. What they're doing to you is wrong." The anonymous sender, identifying only as Admin 2577, explained that the airline's internal investigation had been thoroughly corrupted. Evidence had been deleted, witness statements altered, and records modified, all traceable through the company's digital systems. "They thought they erased everything, but our backup servers maintained complete logs. I've attached what they tried to hide. Use it carefully. They'll know someone from inside helped you." The attachments included a treasure trove of unaltered documents, original emails between Richard Sterling and Harold Whitman strategically planning the cover-up, Victoria's complete personnel file showing multiple prior incidents with minority passengers, and most damning, direct communications, ordering specific discriminatory practices disguised as customer tier prioritization. One email from Sterling to senior management explicitly stated, "The profitability analysis is clear. Our highest value customers prefer interactions with crew members who reflect their own background. While we can't state this publicly, our staffing and service protocols should quietly align with these preferences." Another document revealed payments to transportation officials, including Rebecca and Chairman Peterson, disguised as consulting fees through a subsidiary company. The evidence explained how the hearing had been so thoroughly compromised. Jasmine immediately forwarded everything to Carlos, her hands shaking with a mixture of vindication and fear. The evidence was explosive, but also potentially inadmissible, if obtained without authorization. "We need to move quickly," Carlos advised during an emergency meeting in the hospital cafeteria the next morning. "They'll discover the leak soon and move to contain it." "Can we use this legally?" Jasmine asked. "It was obtained by someone accessing company systems." "Not directly in court," Carlos admitted. "But we can use it to guide our investigation, to know where to look and what to formally request through legal channels, and we can share it with journalists under Shield law protections." Jasmine's legal team worked through the night preparing a comprehensive strategy. By morning, they had drafted new motions for the DOJ investigation and prepared specific document requests that would now yield results since they knew exactly what to ask for. They were preparing to submit everything when Jasmine received an urgent call from Tara. "They know about the leak," she warned. "There's panic at headquarters. They're preparing an emergency injunction claiming corporate espionage and invasion of privacy." Within hours, United's attorneys filed for a sweeping gag order on all illegally obtained material, regardless of content. The cooperative judge granted the temporary order, prohibiting Jasmine, her attorneys, or anyone acting on their behalf from distributing, discussing, or referencing in any proceeding any internal United Airlines documents not obtained through formal discovery. "They're using the court to suppress evidence of their own wrongdoing," Carlos fumed after reviewing the order. "It's procedurally clever. By focusing on the method of obtaining the documents rather than their content, they've effectively censored the truth." The gag order presented an impossible dilemma. Violating it would subject Jasmine to contempt charges and potentially criminal penalties. Obeying it meant watching crucial evidence disappear as United's IT department scrubbed backup servers and covered their tracks. Jasmine faced the classic whistleblower's paradox. The evidence of wrongdoing could not be revealed without breaking rules designed by the very system protecting the wrongdoers. That afternoon, as Jasmine wheeled herself to the NICU for the twins' feeding schedule, her phone buzzed with increasingly frantic messages from Carlos. United's attorneys had expanded their offensive, filing motions in 3 different jurisdictions, simultaneously overwhelming their legal team's capacity to respond. Each filing required immediate attention to prevent summary judgments in United's favor. The stress triggered another spike in Jasmine's blood pressure. As nurses rushed to stabilize her, she realized the airline's strategy remained unchanged. Apply maximum pressure until she broke. Their resource advantage meant they could sustain this legal barrage indefinitely, while her team exhausted themselves just keeping pace. In her hospital room that evening, as doctors adjusted her medication, Jasmine made a decision based on maternal instinct rather than legal strategy. Her daughters needed her healthy and present more than they needed the satisfaction of a victory that might never come. "I think we need to settle," she told Marcus quietly. "The girls need a mother who's not constantly fighting a system designed to break her." Marcus sat beside her, taking her hand. "Whatever you decide, I support you. But before you make the final call, there's someone who wants to talk to you." He opened the door to reveal Dr. Eleanor Mitchell, chief of neurosurgery at Massachusetts General Hospital and chair of the hospital's board of directors. The distinguished surgeon had been Jasmine's medical school mentor and role model. "Your husband contacted me," Dr. Mitchell explained, pulling a chair to Jasmine's bedside. "He thought you could use some perspective from someone who's fought similar battles." For the next hour, the older surgeon shared her own experiences facing discrimination throughout her 40-year career. She had reviewed Jasmine's case details and the gag order restrictions. "The documents you can't legally distribute," Dr. Mitchell said carefully, "contain information that would interest many parties beyond the courts. Hospital boards, for instance, often include people with significant influence in multiple industries." "The gag order prevents us from sharing anything," Jasmine reminded her. "With the general public or in legal proceedings, yes," Dr. Mitchell agreed. "But I'm a member of 3 hospital boards, including this one. Physician-patient confidentiality creates a protected communication channel. If you happen to discuss certain concerns about systematic discrimination affecting patient care during a medical consultation." The implication was clear. There were avenues beyond conventional legal channels. "Additionally," Dr. Mitchell continued, "I serve on the board of Eastland Financial Group, which happens to be one of United Airlines' largest institutional shareholders. Board members have fiduciary responsibilities that sometimes necessitate uncomfortable conversations about corporate conduct." For the first time in weeks, Jasmine felt a flicker of hope. The system that United had so thoroughly corrupted had vulnerabilities they hadn't anticipated, connections and power networks they didn't control. "I need time to think," Jasmine said, her mind racing with new possibilities. "Of course," Dr. Mitchell replied, standing to leave. "Your primary focus should be your health and your beautiful daughters. But remember, Jasmine, sometimes the most effective challenges to power come from within the power structure itself." After Dr. Mitchell departed, Marcus revealed another significant detail. Dr. Mitchell's son-in-law is Jeffrey Barnes, the new head of the DOJ's Civil Rights Division. She mentioned he's very interested in corporate accountability cases. That night, as Jasmine carefully reviewed the evidence they couldn't legally distribute, she began formulating a strategy that might accomplish what conventional legal approaches could not. The system might be corrupted, but it wasn't monolithic, and United had overlooked the power of medical networks and shareholder influence. For the first time since entering the hospital, Jasmine slept without nightmares of defeat. The private birthing center adjacent to Massachusetts General Hospital provided both medical security for the premature twins and absolute privacy for the succession of distinguished visitors who arrived over the next 3 days. To outside observers, these appeared to be courtesy calls to a respected colleague with newborns. In reality, Jasmine was orchestrating the most consequential strategic pivot of the entire ordeal. Dr. Eleanor Mitchell had made introductions to key hospital board members, influential figures whose connections spanned healthcare, finance, law, and government. Each visitor received a medical consultation behind closed doors where Jasmine, careful to observe the letter of the gag order while violating its spirit, shared her concerns about systemic issues affecting patient care in transportation settings. Her medical credentials provided credibility her legal case had been denied. When she detailed how stress-induced preeclampsia had threatened her twins' lives, these powerful individuals, many parents themselves, responded with genuine outrage. Bernard Watkins, chairman of Eastland Financial Group, arrived late Tuesday evening after most visitors had departed. As one of United's largest institutional shareholders, controlling nearly 8% of the airline's stock, his interest in Jasmine's patient care concerns carried particular significance. "Troubling information, Dr. Williams," he commented, after their hour-long discussion. "Particularly from a risk management perspective, these practices represent significant liability exposure and reputational damage potential. As a fiduciary responsible to our investors, I have an obligation to address governance failures of this magnitude." His carefully chosen words acknowledged the gag order constraints while clearly communicating his intent to act on what he'd learned. "I understand certain legal complexities prevent broader discussions at present," he continued. "However, our quarterly shareholders meeting occurs tomorrow. Board governance issues are always appropriate topics for such forums." Watkins departed with a gentle pat on Maya's tiny head and a promise. "Focus on these little ones, Dr. Williams. Some responsibilities now fall to others with different standing in this matter." The following morning, United Airlines leadership team gathered at corporate headquarters to prepare for the quarterly shareholders meeting. Richard Sterling reviewed his presentation, highlighting record profits and expanded routes. Confident in his position despite the ongoing Williams situation, the legal department had effectively contained the crisis through aggressive litigation and strategic pressure. The Compliant Transportation Committee would soon issue its final report, dismissing the discrimination allegations entirely. Sterling was addressing his executive team when his assistant interrupted with an urgent message. Bernard Watkins had requested an immediate private meeting before the shareholders' session. "Probably wants assurance about the dividend projections," Sterling told Harold Whitman confidently. "Institutional investors are always focused on quarterly returns." Watkins arrived with a team of Eastland's legal counsel and risk management specialists, an unusual contingent for a routine pre-meeting discussion. His typically cordial demeanor was replaced by cold professionalism. "Mr. Sterling, I'll be direct. Eastland has received troubling information about governance failures and potential legal violations that present material risks to our investment. Before today's meeting, I'm offering a courtesy opportunity to address these concerns." Sterling maintained his composure. "Bernard, I assure you our legal compliance is exemplary. If this is about the Williams complaint, that situation is being resolved appropriately." "Is that resolution process why 3 separate federal agencies have opened investigations into your company this week?" Watkins asked, sliding a document across the table. "This is a confidential notification that the Securities and Exchange Commission has launched an inquiry into whether United's public statements about its discrimination policies constitute securities fraud, given evidence of systematic contrary practices." Sterling blanched. The SEC investigation hadn't been disclosed publicly, and securities fraud carried potential criminal penalties. There must be some misunderstanding. Additionally, Watkins continued relentlessly, our risk assessment team has calculated the potential liability exposure from class action discrimination suits at approximately $2 billion, not including punitive damages or brand devaluation. This constitutes a material undisclosed risk to shareholders. The systematic dismantling of Sterling's position continued for 20 minutes as Watkins methodically detailed governance failures, legal exposures, and ethical breaches, all without directly referencing the gagged evidence. His closing statement left no room for negotiation. Eastland will introduce a resolution at today's meeting calling for immediate suspension of all executives involved pending independent investigation. We've secured support from 3 other institutional investors, representing a combined 34% voting interest. Sterling's carefully constructed protection system collapsed. The pressure tactics that had worked against Jasmine, an individual with limited resources, proved ineffective against institutional shareholders with billions at stake. While Sterling scrambled to prevent the impending boardroom coup, Jasmine received updates from Marcus, who monitored financial news from the birthing center. United stock had plunged 11% on rumors of governance concerns as institutional investors positioned themselves ahead of the shareholder meeting. Bernard Watkins called personally 2 hours later. The board has voted to suspend the entire executive leadership team pending independent investigation. Victoria Keller's uncle has been removed from operational authority. The new interim CEO would like to speak with you, without lawyers present. The interim CEO, Janet Foster, previously United Senior VP of International Operations with no connection to Sterling's inner circle, arrived at the birthing center that evening. Her straightforward approach contradicted the company's previous positioning. Dr. Williams, what happened to you was inexcusable, she acknowledged immediately. The airline's response was equally unacceptable. My first official act as interim CEO is to issue a public apology to you and your family. My second is to inform you that we've terminated Victoria Keller's employment and accepted Harold Whitman's resignation. Janet presented a comprehensive settlement proposal that went beyond financial compensation to include structural changes within the airline. Mandatory anti-discrimination training, revised complaint handling procedures, transparent reporting of discrimination allegations, and third-party oversight of resolution processes. We're calling it the Williams Protocol, Janet explained. With your permission, we'd like to implement these changes throughout our operations and share the framework with other airlines as an industry best practice. The proposal included removing the gag order, withdrawing all litigation against Jasmine and Tara, and providing funds to establish a foundation supporting victims of discrimination in the transportation sector. Why the complete reversal? Jasmine asked, suspicious after months of aggressive opposition. Honestly, because shareholders value profits above all else, Janet answered candidly. What Sterling never understood is that systematic discrimination is bad business. Alienating passengers, creating liability exposure, damaging brand reputation. It's financially unsustainable. The board hasn't suddenly embraced moral clarity. They've recognized that discrimination is a luxury they can't afford. After Janet departed, Carlos arrived to review the settlement terms. This is everything we fought for and more, he confirmed after reading the document. The structural changes will help thousands of future passengers, and the Williams Protocol will create your legacy in anti-discrimination policy. As Jasmine held Olivia against her chest, feeling the strengthening heartbeat of her daughter, she considered how their fight had transformed. What began as resistance against one act of discrimination had evolved into systemic reform, supported by the very capitalist machinery that had initially protected the discriminatory practices. Have them add one more provision, Jasmine instructed Carlos. Tara gets her job back with full seniority and compensation for all lost wages. And the airline covers her legal expenses from their harassment campaign. That night, with both twins sleeping peacefully beside her bed for the first time, Jasmine reflected on the unexpected power shift. The system hadn't suddenly become just. The shareholders had acted from self-interest rather than moral conviction. But sometimes justice emerged from unexpected vectors when traditional systems failed. For her daughters, perhaps that was the most important lesson. Injustice could be fought not just through conventional channels, but by understanding and leveraging the underlying systems that governed power itself. 6 months later, Jasmine settled into a comfortable chair in the green room of National Public Television's main studio. Makeup artists made final touches as producers confirmed timing for her segment on the evening's most-watched news program. The twins, now healthy 7-month-olds with their father's dimples and their mother's determined expressions, played contentedly with toys and a portable playpen nearby. 5 minutes, Dr. Williams, an assistant announced. Senator Harrington just finished her segment. Jasmine nodded, reviewing her talking points one final time. Today's interview marked the culmination of a transformation that had extended far beyond her personal vindication. What began as a single act of discrimination on an airplane had catalyzed changes rippling through corporate America, the transportation industry, and federal regulatory frameworks. The months following United's leadership overhaul had brought both justice and unexpected opportunities. Victoria, Harold, and Richard faced federal charges for obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and conspiracy. The criminal consequences of their coordinated campaign to silence Jasmine and suppress evidence. United Airlines had implemented the Williams Protocol throughout its operations, creating what industry analysts now cited as the gold standard for anti-discrimination policies in transportation. 6 other major airlines had adopted similar frameworks, partly from moral imperative but primarily from competitive necessity as passengers increasingly considered corporate ethics in their purchasing decisions. Most significantly, Jasmine had testified before a congressional committee examining corporate discrimination practices. Her composed, methodical presentation of how United had weaponized its resources against an individual victim had resonated across political lines. The resulting legislation, the Transportation Equity and Accountability Act, strengthened protections for discrimination victims and whistleblowers while imposing substantial penalties for corporate retaliation. "We're ready for you, Dr. Williams," the assistant announced. As cameras prepared to roll, Jasmine reflected on her unexpected journey from neurosurgeon to civil rights advocate. Her medical career had resumed. Massachusetts General Hospital had offered her a prestigious position after her recovery, but her work now extended beyond the operating room. The Williams Foundation, established with her settlement funds, provided legal representation to discrimination victims facing corporate opposition. Tara, reinstated at United with promotion to Diversity Training Coordinator, helped develop programs that identified and addressed systemic biases before they manifested as discriminatory incidents. 3, 2, 1. The floor director counted down as the segment began. Tonight we're joined by Dr. Jasmine Williams, whose experience of discrimination aboard a United Airlines flight last year led to sweeping changes in how corporations address racial bias. The host began. Dr. Williams, your case has been described as a turning point in corporate accountability. Did you ever imagine your request for a simple accommodation would lead to congressional testimony? Jasmine smiled. Never. I was simply a pregnant passenger, requesting a pillow. But when that routine request exposed discrimination, I couldn't remain silent, even when fighting back threatened everything my family and I had worked for. The interview explored the broader implications of her case, how corporations often used financial and legal advantages to exhaust individuals who challenged discriminatory practices, how systems designed to provide accountability could be corrupted through influence, and how unexpected allies sometimes emerged from within power structures themselves. The Williams Protocol is now being adopted across multiple industries, the host noted. What do you consider its most important element? The independent oversight, Jasmine responded without hesitation. Internal investigations inevitably protect institutional interests. External accountability ensures complaints receive fair evaluation, regardless of the complainant's resources or connections. As the segment concluded, the host asked a final question. For viewers experiencing discrimination who lack your medical credentials and connections, what message do you have? Jasmine considered the challenging journey behind her. the moments of despair when victory seemed impossible, the personal cost her family had endured, and the unexpected alliances that ultimately turned the tide. First, document everything, she advised practically. Record incidents when possible, maintain detailed timelines, and preserve all communications. Second, recognize that fighting discrimination often triggers escalating resistance. Prepare emotionally and strategically. For this reality, she paused, thinking of viewers facing similar battles without her resources. Most importantly, remember that justice rarely comes through isolated individual action. Find allies, connect with advocacy organizations, and understand that changing systems requires collective effort. My case succeeded not because I fought alone, but because ultimately, enough people with different forms of power recognize that discrimination damages everyone, including those who initially believe they benefit from unjust systems. The interview complete, Jasmine returned to the green room where Marcus waited with the twins. 6-year-old Eliza Carter, daughter of a production assistant, had joined them, fascinated by the babies. "Are you the lady from the airplane?" Eliza asked shyly as Jasmine entered. "I am," Jasmine confirmed, kneeling to the child's level. "My mommy says you made it so people have to be nice to everyone on planes now, even if they look different," Eliza stated with childlike directness. "I hope so," Jasmine smiled. "That's what we all worked for." "I want to be a doctor airplane fixer like you when I grow up," Eliza declared confidently. Jasmine exchanged a glance with Marcus, both recognizing the deeper meaning in the child's ambition. Their fight hadn't been merely about one incident or even systemic airline practices. It represented the ongoing work of creating a world where children like Eliza naturally assumed they could aspire to both medical and social justice, leadership roles regardless of their background. Later that evening, boarding their flight home, Jasmine experienced a moment of déjà vu as she settled into first class with the twins in travel seats. The flight attendant, a young black woman, approached with professional courtesy. "Dr. Williams, welcome aboard. Can I get you anything before takeoff? Perhaps a pillow for more comfortable support with the babies." The simple offer, professional, courteous, without hesitation, represented everything they had fought for. Not preferential treatment, not special accommodation, but simply equal service delivered with equal respect. "Yes, thank you," Jasmine replied, accepting the pillow with a smile that acknowledged the journey behind those simple words. "That would be perfect." Jasmine Williams' journey teaches us powerful lessons about confronting discrimination in today's world. First, individual acts of racism are often symptoms of deeper systemic problems that organizations work actively to conceal. When Jasmine was slapped, she wasn't facing just one flight attendant's prejudice but an entire corporate system designed to protect discriminatory practices. Second, fighting discrimination requires understanding power dynamics. The conventional paths to justice, complaints, hearings, investigations, can be compromised when institutions prioritize self-protection over accountability. True change often requires identifying leverage points within these systems and finding allies with different forms of power. Third, the cost of standing against injustice is rarely distributed fairly. Jasmine risked her career, health, finances, and family's well-being while confronting forces with vastly superior resources. This reality explains why many discrimination victims choose silence, a pragmatic decision, not a moral failure. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, sustainable change comes from making discrimination financially and reputationally costly for organizations. When shareholders recognize discrimination as a business liability rather than an abstract moral issue, they acted decisively where ethical appeals had failed. This illustrates how justice sometimes emerges from unexpected sources when we understand the systems governing power. The Williams Protocol reminds us that individual courage, while essential, must be coupled with strategic thinking and collective action to transform systems that perpetuate inequality. What discrimination have you witnessed or experienced that, when unchallenged, have you ever stood up against injustice and faced unexpected consequences? Share your story in the comments below. If this account of courage against systemic racism resonated with you, Please like and subscribe to support more stories that expose discrimination and celebrate those brave enough to fight it. Remember that every time we speak up, we help create the world our children deserve to inherit. Thank you for listening to Jasmine's journey. May it inspire all of us to recognize that justice requires not just individual courage, but strategic, collective action.